Next is Lady T. Have a great afternoon.
Hello, I'm partner Gary, aka DJ Gaza Taylor, and I choose a theme and play our favorite songs that fit that theme. Tune in right here every Sunday from noon to 2 on iLive Radio.
Every Friday, take a trip around the world with music from around the globe. Colors of Rhythm with your host DJ Ron John. Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on iLive Radio, iliveradio.com.
Hey, what's going on, everybody in cyberspace? This is The Groove Show with your boy, the crowd pleaser, DJ Mark Anthony. Don't forget, each and every Saturday afternoon from 4 to 6 p.m., we want to put you in the mood for whatever the night has in store. I'm playing only the best feel-good party rocking, body-shaking music from funk to soul to reggae to R&B, house to salsa, and much, much more. We call it The Groove each and every Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. Keep it locked. It's the crowd pleaser, baby. You know how we do. We'll see you on the air. Peace.
Attention all musicians, bands, associations, clubs, and organizations that represent collective styles of music across Canada. Now is the time to rebuild our collective music nation genres like hip-hop, R&B, jazz, soul, reggae, gospel, and more united. The Collective Music Nation is a non-profit organization committed to the development of collective music. Free memberships are available now. The Collective Music Nation. One voice, strength in unity.
Hey, what's up? It's your girl Gwendolyn Collins, aka The Storyteller, and I'm so excited that the Soul Fest Lounge is presenting yet another hashtag The Virgo Lounge event. It's all going down at Tutu's on Saturday, the 6th of August. Doors open at 7 p.m. Live music starts at 8 p.m. Coming with me is Alicia Glover, Micah Chevalier, and for the first time in Canada, Blaze.
Hello. Happy Sunday and welcome to this edition of Womanhood. I'm your host, Lady T.
And I am Tanya Nicole.
And here we are today. And today we're going to be discussing part 2 of Fatherless Daughter Syndrome, which has really sparked some conversation amongst our groups and friends and family. What about you?
Yep, same thing. Definitely great conversation to have. And we are certainly looking forward to the second part today. We have a very special guest coming up. Her name is Dr. Renita Gibbs. She is a certified life coach, a mental health counselor, fatherless daughter advocate, and professional speaker. She's been working in this field since 2000 and is the author of a book titled Finding Daddy. Now, this book explores the effects that girls encounter when they grow up without a father. So without further ado, we want to get this show moving so that we don't miss any important details because we run out of time.
I know.
So welcome, Dr. Renita Gibbs.
Yes, let's let her in the room.
Yep, there we go. Welcome, Dr. Gibbs. We're waiting for audio.
Oh, her. Okay.
All right. Can y'all hear me?
Yay, we can hear you now.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello.
Welcome to Womanhood.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited to be on your platform.
We're very glad to be here. I know it was last minute, but I tell you, everything happens for a reason. And I know the wealth of information that you have to share with our audience is going to be well received and well needed. So once again, thank you for making yourself available this last minute to share with our audience this important message and information about fatherless daughters.
Absolutely.
Great.
Make my screen a little bigger here.
Technology.
Okay, there we go. Now I can see y'all.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll just start the conversation off. So I think it was 2 weeks ago, started this very great conversation about fatherless daughters. My sister and myself are both, I guess we can consider ourselves fatherless daughters. And it was a conversation that we had while we went away on a trip. And we thought it would just be a great topic of conversation because we spoke about it for hours. And usually when the topic comes up, it tends to be a topic that we can speak about for a very, very long time. So we figured if we were having these type of conversations and these type of questions, there must be millions of other people who do as well. So we just feel that it's such an important topic, and we've learned so much about ourselves through our childhoods and teenagehoods into adulthood, and we've started to kind of piece certain things back to the fact that we are fatherless daughters. So we're extremely excited to have an expert on the topic join us today. So once again, thank you so much for coming. Okay, so my first question for you, Dr. Renita, would be, what is the role of a father in a daughter's life, first and foremost?
I would say a role of a father and a daughter, our father is our first love. And that daddy, he makes us feel secure. He make us feel protected, and he give us that praise because we want the validation from our father. So our role, those two parts that we play, is very important because he set the precedence and he set the status for our life on what we're looking for when we start to become through our adolescence and our adulthood.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to ask another question, because writing a book called Finding Daddy, I was just like, I wonder what inspired you or encouraged you to write a book about fatherless daughters and how maybe your experience with your father affected or influenced your writing this book.
Well, believe it or not, my experience of writing a book was a mandate. It was a mandate truly from God, because I never was interested in being an author or writing a book. But shortly after I connected with my father, God spoke to me and told me that the journey that I was on, it wasn't for me. I needed to be obedient and put my story in a book so I can be a blessing to help other individuals. Because my father walked out of my life at the age of 6, and I didn't see him again until I was 39. But I was blessed with the last 6 months of his life. So I was able to get some questions answered. And that's what inspired me to write the book, so I can be able to help as many individuals who want to be helped in that capacity.
Okay. I might be jumping the gun here, but I'm curious about those questions that you felt you needed to ask, or those questions that you found answers for, and how that changed your trajectory of your life.
Well, it changed my life because I wanted to know who was my daddy, what was my daddy like, what traits did I get from my dad. When I did connect to my dad, I wanted to know why, what happened, what was the disconnect? You're living, I'm living, I was still living, and you knew how to find me. I knew how to find you. But what happened? Why was you not even interested in even connecting with me? What was the disconnect? So it was a lot of unanswered questions that I asked him. But, in the midst of me asking him some of the questions, when I did find him, he was very ill and very sick. So I really couldn't push the envelope really like I really wanted to, because his health was very, very challenging at the time. But just the time that we was able to spend together and some of the questions that he did answer was priceless.
Amazing.
It was priceless. And now I can really relate and understand why sometimes when I was talking to my mother about connecting with my father or getting to know him, why the reservations always came up, why she was a little hesitant, because there was some things that I found out that was just, it was mind blowing about their relationship.
Okay. So would you say it was a relationship she had with your father that kind of put the barrier in place between you and your father?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that. Just put it like this. I wasn't even supposed to be here.
Okay.
My mother and my father was breaking up. They were separating. So what she did like most females, she ran off and got pregnant with me, thinking if she got pregnant with me, that'll make my daddy stay.
Wow.
So, after she told him that, after she told my father that she was pregnant, he still left. So, it was very challenging because now God gave you life, and now you don't realize that man that you want to be with don't want to be with you. So now what you try to do, you try to get rid of the baby.
Right.
So it was a lot of challenges. God give you life and then you speak death over it because you really didn't want it. You just did it because you was trying to hold on to something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's funny because when I hear that, we hear those stories all too well, even in the years that we're in right now. I can think of probably 3 or 4 situations where there's a female involved and she thinks that getting pregnant by this man is going to keep the man. And I automatically go to thinking, wow, especially learning about this topic, did that have something connected with having a fatherless being a fatherless daughter and needing attention or needing to be loved or needing to feel loved, So it's funny how things just kind of play itself out in our lives and we don't even realize why we do what we do. There's this undercurrent of, lacking in knowledge, like, why am I feeling this way in this situation? What does it say about my self-worth? What does it say about my self-esteem? Where did I learn and pick up all that information from? Which, once again, learning about this topic, I'm just like, wow, there's so many dynamics. Like, the father is so important in the life.
Absolutely.
Foundational.
To a woman's, to our mental health and our personal self-esteem development and a host of other things, that go along with having that missing piece of the puzzle not be there in your life in childhood and sometimes even through adulthood.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah, it was very challenging for me. It was very challenging because, like I said, the opportunity that I had with my father and the time I was able to spend with him was priceless. But just some of the things that I shared out, I found out, in the midst of us having those conversations was just, was mind blowing to me. But not only that, you want to know where you come from, where your DNA. So it was a lot of health challenges that he had that I needed to know about just in case in the future that I may have those challenges.
Right.
So it was, the connection was beautiful. The time that we spent together was priceless and the connection was beautiful. I didn't expect that. I always thought that it was going to be the opposite of what I received, but it was a beautiful connection, a beautiful reunion between my dad and I. And in the book, I break down and I tell you how I connected with him and how I met him. So I don't want to give too much because I know people are going to be very interested in reading the book. And in the book, it talks about that.
Yes, okay. Absolutely. The book, Finding Daddy. Okay, so as Tina Cole already mentioned, there are various impacts of being a fatherless daughter. So just want to touch on that. So let's start from the mental health impact. What does that look like usually for a fatherless daughter?
Well, you have fatherless daughters have a lot of, they have a lot of daddy issues that show up. And one of those daddy issues that show up, it can be rage, it can be anger, it can be shame, low self-esteem, looking for love in all the wrong places. And what happens once we start to deal with some of those things, we start looking for a filler, something to fill us or to make us feel whole. And sometimes we turn to, it can end up to be substance abuse, it can be alcoholic abuse, it can be any kind of substance to give you that temporary fix or that temporary filler to make you feel to feel what you're not getting. So some fatherless daughters, they struggle with that, and that can lead to mental health issues such as, behavior patterns that show up in your life, and that happens from time to time.
Promiscuity is a big one as well that pops up a lot for fatherless daughters as part of that coping, that need to fulfill a space that feels empty, and they don't even realize why they are doing it. It just feels good. They need to fill that void or fill that space. They move on. It's empty again, and they're constantly trying to do things that are not healthy for themselves, right? To try to fill a void that they don't even realize is there. I think that's the crazy part about it, because from my personal experience, not having a father in my life and just having a mother at home, you don't realize that there's a void. Right. You know, you're a kid. This is the space that you're in. You know, mom takes care of everything. You know, my grandmother took some of the work as well. But you don't realize that the father figure was missing. And that's just your norm. So you literally don't realize that a piece of your well-being has been cut off until later on in life, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right. You know, if you think about it, a female, she become a fatherless daughter by one of three ways. Your father can be unavailable, he can be unattached, or he can be absent. Now, let me explain to you what I mean when I say that. He can be unavailable, meaning by way of the military, by way of incarceration, or just not available. Or he can be unattached. You and your father is raised in the same household. Y'all living in the same household under the same roof, but there's no attachment. You upstairs, he's downstairs. Or he can be absent, just like my father, just was not present at the time. And when a girl grow up with a disconnect at that sort, you know, like that, the making of a fatherless daughter start to take root in her life, whether he was unavailable, unattached, or absent. That's the way that a female become a fatherless daughter. And the saddest thing is about a lot of females don't even know that they're fatherless daughters, because they say, well, hey, my dad was in the house. He was the breadwinner, but it's still no connection. Y'all don't have no kind of bond, no connection, nothing. All he was out there was doing was, you know, making the money for the household. Yeah. So a lot of people don't even know they're fatherless because they feel as though their dad was in the house with them. They think that, you know, everything was good, but they're not. And now that they're in their adult age, they're starting to see things and patterns, and everything is starting to show up, and they're starting to connect the dots with really what's really going on in their life and why they can't sustain healthy relationships, why they going through this cycle. You know, these behavior patterns constantly keep showing up over and over and over in their life.
It's funny that you should mention that, because it's an important point. I remember having a client that said she had like a really good relationship with her dad, and she felt that she didn't have any daddy issues or mommy issues because he was somewhat available, but she was coming in to get some help. And I kind of saw a fatherless daughter pattern. And what I learned was that the father was actually incarcerated for most of her life, but she still wasn't able to connect the two as being a fatherless daughter because they had sporadic conversation. He was nice during the conversations. So it's funny that you should mention that, because it's like she wouldn't associate herself with that label, but technically based on the relationship, his lack of availability, his being incarcerated for majority of her life, there were some patterns there that were that showed up during our sessions.
You know, a lot of fatherless daughters don't want people to know they're fatherless. For whatever reason, they hide behind it. A lot of fatherless daughters are shamed and they're embarrassed, and they don't want you to know. That's the reason why a lot of fatherless daughters try to become overachievers. Where if I get all this education, nobody won't know I'm fatherless. If I climb to the top of my ladder in my job, nobody won't know I'm fatherless. You know, it's time for fatherless daughters really to start being true to themselves, about themselves, and take the mask off. How long are we going to continue to hide behind this mask like everything is good? Because it's not. And until you address and deal with the forgiveness piece, you're gonna constantly have this issue that constantly keeps showing up, because the power is in the forgiveness part of being a fatherless daughter, because it's not our fault. We didn't choose our parents. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's just it's a situation that we're in, and we just can't continue to always play the victim role. You know, if you want to push past your pain and turn your situation around.
Very interesting. So when we talk about the relationship aspect of being a fatherless daughter, we mentioned in our last show that there's a 92% likelihood of them being divorced, which I found very interesting. So why is that? How are they showing up in their marriages that is causing the damage within the marriage on their part?
Well, you know, I think I listened on your show this morning that both of you guys was divorced. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. And you know what? As a fatherless daughter, sometimes we are too independent. we never really seen a healthy relationship. We never been in that. We never was raised in that environment. So we don't know what to expect. Our daddy was not there to set that example for us. So we don't know what we're really looking for. You know, like I said, a girl gets her identity from her dad. So when she's raised without her dad, she's struggling to have identity issues. And you're absolutely right. It's 92% of divorces from fatherless daughters. Now, that's very high, but I can understand and I can see, because some fatherless daughters don't know how to be submissive. You know, it's only by the grace of God. Next month, August the 31st, I will celebrate 25 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
But it's only by thank you. It's only by the grace of God that God sent me a God-fearing husband, because throughout my marriage, from time to time, I have issues. You know, we may have some challenges. And I tell my husband, you know, work with me. That's a fatherless daughter womb showing up. Work with me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm still under construction. Because from time to time, those traits show up. Because for the individuals that's listening under the sound of my voice that are married, and if I pose a question to all the married people listening to me right now, fatherless daughters, I don't care how good your relationship is, how good your significant other is, fatherless daughters have trusting issues. We do not and will not give 100%. I don't know what it is in the relationship. 99 and a half. It's a song say 99 and a half won't do.
Yeah.
But we would not give 100%. I don't know what it is. That's a fatherless daughter trait that show up. We may love you unconditionally, but we're not going to give you that 100% because of the way that we was raised and some of the things that we went through. And, you know, when I do my workshops and my seminars and I ask this question, and it's so funny because the majority of the females who are married raise their hand and they'll sit back and they'll think about it and be like, wow, you're right. You know, we'll give 99 points something, but we're not going to give 100. And that's because of those trusting issues that we have as fatherless daughters.
I love something that you said, how you communicate with your husband when you do have, you know, issues that come up, that you're like, hey, I'm under construction. And knowing that you're under construction and having a compassionate, empathetic husband or significant other is so helpful for the growth, for your growth and the growth of the union altogether. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah, it's
you know,
powerful.
that first there's that acknowledgement, right? Second is that you have a partner that's understanding to that regard. Okay, I know where it's coming from. This is not her. This is just something that she's dealing with because of her daddy issues. I just find that so beautiful. I think it's something that we could all, you know, take some pointers from in our own personal lives. Be like, listen, I acknowledge that I have this issue. Just work with me because I'm working on getting better and healing these wounds.
Right. Because, you know, I found my father in 2009 and God blessed me with the last 6 months of his life. He died 6 months after I found him. And it was amazing because from 1997 up until 2009, I really couldn't enjoy and couldn't celebrate my husband for Father's Day because I was always struggling for Father's Day, and that was always a challenge for me. So after I found my father and I was able to really get free and get a good understanding of some things that God revealed to me, now I was able to start celebrating my husband for Father's Day. So he understand what I was going through my whole journey. He understand how I was struggling and how that was very difficult for me. So, you know, it's only by the grace of God that he's a God-fearing man, that he's there and help me along the way and understand when I tell him that those are daddy wounds that show up.
That's love. That's beautiful.
That's definitely love. Tina Cole?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask another question.
No, go ahead.
Okay, well, I guess I asked the next question. How do you overcome the effects of being a fatherless daughter?
Well, one of the things you got to do, I tell you, the key is the power in forgiveness. It's just like attending an Alcoholics Anonymous class. You got to admit to the fact that you're fatherless. And, you know, when I do my workshops, one of the things I have them to do is say, I Renita Gibbs is a fatherless daughter. You got to acknowledge the fact that you're fatherless, and then you can move past that. You got to understand that it is what it is. It ain't nothing we can do about it. Once you acknowledge that, and then you got to accept the fact that you got to forgive your father for whatever happened. You may not know all the pieces to the puzzle. You may not know what happened, why things end up that way, but you got to, go through that power of love and forgiveness. Once you go through that piece, all those layers like an onion start to peel off you. And that was the first thing I did when I connected with my father. When I seen him for the first time, I told him I love and I forgive him. I love you and I forgive you. That's the first thing that came out my mouth, because in order for me to go past push past some of the anger and some of the resentment and some of the, things that I had in my heart, I had to get all that unforgiveness out of my heart in order for us to move forward, to be able to have a fruitful relationship, or a daughter and daddy relationship.
It's funny, as I'm hearing you say, I'm going to jump in, Lady T.
Yeah, go for
I'm
it.
having a visceral reaction right now.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Just hearing you say, you have to admit, like AA meeting. And there's a little bit of sadness that's come over me in this moment,
right.
And I think it's really acknowledging, because of course, you grow up, you live your life, you're not focused on a lot of stuff, in your past, but hearing you talk about the importance of that, it just brings a bit of sadness inside of me right now, which is probably an indication that I need some work to do in that area as well, because I'm just like, wow, I'm feeling really sad right now. I am a fatherless daughter. I'm the nice sister, right? I'm the one that, I'm very passive and, forgiving. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. I have that way of dealing with things. But right now, as you say that, for some reason, it's hitting pretty hard.
I like how you said that. You're the nice sister. So I'm the hard sister, clearly. It has impacted us in different ways.
Because me and my sister was raised in the same household, and I always wanted to be daddy's little girl. Even after I found my father, our dad, because we have the same dad and mother. Yeah. So even after I found my dad, she was like, whatever, I'm the girl, I don't care. Because, the majority of us walk around and we say something, you can't miss what you never had.
Right.
Yes.
That's what your mouth say, but that's not what your heart say. Because you can say that, but if your dad show up on your doorstep, you're going to melt. You're going to break down. You're going to start crying, because that's your biological father. You have this man chromosomes in you. So a lot of people try to hide behind that cliche. Well, Renita, you can't miss what you never had. That's what your mouth saying, but your heart is not really saying that. Because if your daddy and you was able to make amends to whatever, you will love on him despite whatever went through, because that's your daddy. You're here because of this man. And I know it's a lot of relationships out there where a lot of men probably did some things that, a lot of females are not happy about, but we can't continue to, we got to push past that. We got to go through the power of forgiveness in order for us to get free, because if not, you're going to be walking around and you're not going to be free. And that's the reason why I can be so transparent and talk about it, because God done delivered me and I'm free, and now I'm open. From time to time, I do break down. I break down and I cry. I can be given a seminar, and if it come up on me, because I'm passionate about my work and I'm passionate about what I do, because see, I walk through these shoes. I walk these shoes. Right. So I don't have to prepare for anything, because I can just speak from the heart, because this is some shoes that I walked in. So, I mean, you just got to go through that forgiveness piece. That is the key, that forgiveness piece. And that's how I got free, because I used to be angry. I used to be mad. I used to look at my other friends, be like, hey, well, they come from a 2-parent household. Why I don't have 2 parents in my house? Why did my daddy teach me about the birds and the bees? Where's my daddy? I didn't get the opportunity to go to the daughter and daddy dance. Yeah. What happened with me? What's wrong with me? These are all kind of things that I was looking at myself, trying to find fault in me, thinking something was wrong with me because him and my mom relationship didn't work out. And the older I got, the more serious I got about my search for my father. And then, you know, one day I was just out on a speaking engagement, and it's so funny because my father was retired military. So, you know, my mother took him for child support. So all throughout my high school and my college life, I was able to get child support, but not only I was able to get military benefits.
Oh.
So when I used to go and get physicals on base, they used to always have to update the records, you know, as far as asking me, are you still at this address? Is your daddy still at this address? And things of that nature. So at one visit, I remembered the address.
Oh.
And I always kept that address on me. And I was just out years later in 2009. I was 39 years old, and I was on a speaking event. I was going to speak at an event. And I was driving up the road, and I saw a sign that said Fayetteville, North Carolina, like 20 miles ahead. Mm-hmm. And I started sweating. I got nervous. And I made it up in my mind in that car that once I got finished doing what I had to do, speaking, I was going to go knock on my daddy's door. Wow. And that's exactly what I did. But you know what? The first day I went to my dad's house, he wasn't home. But when I pulled up, ladies, and I saw my maiden name on the mailbox, I started panicking. My hands got sweaty. I couldn't function. My arms started sweating. I didn't know what to do. Wow. Yeah. I didn't know what to do. And I knocked on the door, and he wasn't home. And I did the same thing most people did. Oh, well, I tried. Oh, well, I came this far. I tried. It's all good. It's all good. That's what my mouth was saying. Mm-hmm. But when I went back to that hotel room, I couldn't hardly sleep because I felt as though I had came so far and I was let down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I went back the next day, and the rest was history. Because when I went back that next day, he answered that door. Wow. And it was just a blessing because when I knocked on the door, I heard movement in the house. I didn't know who was coming out. But when that man came out the house and I was able to actually physically look and see a man who looked just like me, and it was my daddy, we just hugged and embraced each other. And the first thing I could say to him was, I love you and I forgive you.
Wow.
And the rest is history. It was priceless from there.
Yeah.
It's a blessing that you had an opportunity to see him. Unfortunately, some people wait too late.
Right.
You know, and their father has passed. So if there's another message in this, if you are a fatherless daughter, consider reaching out to your dad. They're not perfect, you know, any more than we are. So just be open to that forgiveness aspect of it and see if you can regain some level of relationship with them in whatever state or phase they are in their lives right now, and hoping that, you know, they're open to receiving you as well.
Yeah. I like
well,
that.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's okay. Go for it, Dr. Renita.
No, you've been quiet, sis. Go ahead. Talk.
Oh, I'm just taking it all in, you know. My question actually goes back to the forgiveness piece. So can you forgive your father for not being present, but still choose to not want to have a relationship with him? In your opinion and your... Yeah.
I think you can, because once you forgive, that's your responsibility. You're doing what you need to do as far as forgive him. Mm-hmm. Now, whether or not you guys be able to sustain a relationship where y'all spend quality time together, that may not happen. Some people may be so upset and may not want to have a relationship, but just that power and forgiveness piece is powerful. Mm-hmm. You know, and let me go back to what you just said about, you know, if your father is no longer living. I tell some of my clients, if your father is no longer living, sometimes we have to write a letter. We may have to write a letter and put everything you want to say in that letter. Now, after you write that letter, you can do two things. You can bury the letter, you can tear the letter up, you can burn the letter, or even if you got an address, you can send the letter to the address knowing that it's not going to probably get to him because he's no longer, you know, living or what have you. But get that out of your heart. Get it off of you by expressing yourself. And you can express yourself by way of writing a letter, you know, to your father and saying some of the things that you want to say if he's no longer living. Mm-hmm. But I challenge anyone who know where their father is, you know, and I know it's kind of hard, but I tell them, be the better person. Be the better person and try to make the connection. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to be positive or negative, but I was at the point in my life where I wanted to make a change. I wanted to fix that. I was living behind the mask, and I was just, I wasn't happy with my situation, and I know only I can fix it. Mm-hmm. So if it's an individual listening on the sound of our voice, you know where your dad at, make the connection and just let God orchestrate everything else on how the outcome is going to turn out.
And that's where the forgiveness piece comes in once again, right? Mm-hmm. It's letting that guard down, letting that mask down, admitting, hey, I am a fatherless daughter, then taking the next step in faith, to reach out and to forgive first. Right. And whatever happens, let it happen, naturally.
Naturally.
Right.
So I know we have another guest coming on.
We do.
So we have another guest coming on. He's a male, and he's open to sharing his story about him abandoning his children at one point and where they are right now in the relationship. I think it's an important piece to bring in, as well as we can start to learn, how can a father kind of redeem himself? What are things that fathers can do to help rebuild the foundation that was broken at an early age?
Yes, wonderful. So I'd like to introduce the CEO of I Live Music himself, Mr. DJ Sessions, is here in the studio with me.
Good afternoon, ladies.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Yes. It takes a lot of courage, I know, to come on a public platform and speak about, things that are very personal and have an element of vulnerability attached to it. So we commend you for coming on today.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for sharing your story. Okay, so where would you like to begin with, Mr. Sessions? Well, let's talk about your story. Do you want to kind of give us just a little...
Very, very high level?
Very high level synopsis of your situation with your daughter.
Yeah, so I got married young, at 22. We were divorced by the time, or separated and divorced by the time I was 27. And it was challenging, right? It was a difficult time in my life. I was a DJ. I was just doing a bunch of crazy stuff at the time. When you're younger. And it just got to a point for myself is I needed to get away. Initially, it was just for a couple of weeks. I'm a IT guy by trade. I was a developer. So I took a 2-week break to Antigua where my mother was at the time. 2 weeks turned into 6 years in the Caribbean. So during that period, myself and my children got disconnected in terms of contact. There was a moment, and I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but there was a moment, and I think I have actually. There was a moment where an unusual situation happened. I was a couple of years in, 3 years in, haven't spoken to them, haven't seen them. They'd moved, and I was coming from England, going back to Antigua. And the person I was dating at the time, obviously was aware of my situation, said, was getting into the airport, she said to me, at some point, you need to reach out to your kids. And I was like, I've tried to find them, and she'd moved and I don't know where. The efforts were difficult because I was working abroad, right? So it's only when I came back. But as I was coming up the escalator, and I got to the top of the escalators at the airport, who do I see? I see my twins.
Wow.
With my ex-wife's now ex-husband. And at that moment, what do you do? Okay? So, one thing I will say, and I'll put my hand on my heart when I say this, is that fear is a massive thing. And it's not just a fear of the fact that, the surprise and the shock of seeing them, but I think immediately was the fear of rejection if I went up. The situation between my ex-wife and, that guy wasn't very nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had that to tackle as well. So I didn't say anything. I just carried on walking, checked in. Obviously my mood had changed and she couldn't work out where my ex-girlfriend couldn't work out what it was. And, I told her, I saw my kids. And it took a lot of courage for me to try and find them again, but we couldn't find them again. Okay. So I was running around the airport, couldn't see them, couldn't find them. And I had to go through to check in. So I'm now devastated. Ironically, they were on the same plane as me.
Wow.
All of them. They were traveling to Antigua. His family was from Montserrat. So I was literally sitting 3 or 4 rows back. Okay. Now, my sons are autistic, so they have short-term, long-term memory issues. So they didn't recognize me, but my daughter did recognize me. I didn't say anything for the whole flight. They didn't say anything for the whole flight. It was very awkward, right? Because, and I'm first one to admit it, like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how I was going to be, if my daughter's going to come running at me and hit me, or, even if I have a verbal altercation with my ex-wife, I just didn't want that smoke, right? I'd already kind of gone away and set up a life for myself, and I was good. And probably one of my biggest regrets, actually, in life, that I didn't do anything at that time. And it took me a long time to really start to tackle whether I should forgive myself for that moment. Fast forward a few years into the future, we did reconnect. But it was different, right? My daughters and my sons, their formative years, I wasn't there and I wasn't available for them. So our relationship from that time going forward, she loves me, I love her. She's 30 now. She's about to give birth to my second grandchild. But we did have a conversation, and we had a conversation about that day she saw me in Antigua. And she said to me, she goes, I thought you were going to come up and grab me or take me, and you didn't. And she always held on to that.
Wow.
Right? So, when we did reconnect, obviously, you reconnect from a perspective of you're trying to get to know your kids again. She was 15 at the time, trying to get to know your kids again. And, it was difficult. It was like they were strangers to me and I was strangers to them. Right? So you're trying to rebuild from the bottom up. And it's taken a number of years for us to get to a point where, she feels like my daughter, but she's never going to feel like my daughter like she should feel like my daughter. Because I wasn't there to raise her. I wasn't there involved in her life, or a big part of her life which she was developing. So I'm thankful, she's the type of individual that, very loving, very forgiving, very much in the ilk of, a bit like myself, she kind of like, she'll take some crap and she'll forgive you for it, right? That's her, right? And I'm very thankful for that because, she loves me, and that's really important, right? But for me, I love her. I carry a massive amount of guilt in my heart for missing so much of her life with which she was developing into the woman that she is. And I'm glad that she did develop into the woman that she is, and she had the ability to forgive me for what I had done. I was responsible for that.
I have to say this before I kind of get Dr. Gibbs' input. I applaud you seriously for sharing your story and even being vulnerable to say how you feel about it now. You're dealing with, maybe a little bit of shame from that experience. And a lot of men, unfortunately, they're not even at that space to even say, I'm sorry. A lot of times you get excuses, like, well, your mama was this, your mommy was that. And I just hear you taking full accountability for how you could have done things differently. And you're in a space where you're trying to figure out what this new relationship looks like and how to grow on that. So I just want to get that out of the way before I get some input from Dr. Gibbs after hearing that, his very personal story.
Yeah.
I mean, all I can say is, wow. I mean, that was, it made me think about the time that when my mother took my father for child support and we went to court. And she told me and my sister that we was going to see our dad, and we got so excited because we thought we was going to see our dad, not knowing we was going to the courthouse. So when we got in the courthouse, we saw Daddy, and we was like, hey, there go Daddy. And we was trying to run over there towards Dad, and she was like, no, stay over here. We didn't understand that, the separation. But what he just said about how his daughter asked him, wow, I thought you was going to pick me up or that. When I was standing in front of the judge and the judge asked my father that told him he was there for child support, and he asked my daddy, are you the father of these 2 little girls? When he looked at me and my sister, he said, no, I don't know who those little girls are.
Wow.
And I felt her pain when he just said what she said to me, because it felt like somebody had stabbed me in my heart when my daddy said that in front of me. You know, it's like the one man that I love. It's like at that point, the making of a fatherless daughter took root to me because I said no other man will hurt me like that. So at that time, I actually started to build a wall around my heart. And I can feel her pain, the young lady, when he just said that. That's exactly where my mind went to what my dad said me and how that really mentally messed me up for years because I wouldn't let nobody else get to my heart. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about a question that I think I heard your sister say, or one of y'all said this morning when I was listening to the podcast, that I broke up with you before you broke up with me when I was dating early on. I felt the trouble coming. I didn't want you to break up with me, so I was the one that always break up because I said my daddy hurt me. I would never let another man hurt me. And even after I found my daddy, I had to go back to some of those ex-boyfriends from elementary and high school and just apologize because I know it was me that caused that because of how I was feeling. So when the young man just made that statement, that's what took me there because I can actually feel his daughter pain.
Right. So at this point of the game, like, how does a fatherless daughter begin the healing process with the help of the father who's now willing to be a part of their life?
You asking me that question?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I would say the only thing he can do is just, try to play a significant part in their life. Whatever he say he's going to do, try to do it, because right now, it's like trial by error. The first thing that he say he's going to do that he don't do, it's going to cause her to get upset and be mad about whatever. So, just continue to try to reach out to her, try to make those connections, try to, give her your undivided attention when they are together doing various activities, and just continue to love on her. Just love on her as much as possible. And no, it's going to take some time. Yeah. It's going to take some time for her to feel secure, for her to feel loved, for her to feel protected, because he has not been there. But the fact that he's trying and he want to be a part of her life, that's a plus. But it may be a little more challenging than what he's willing to can understand. But just hang in there because it's possible. Mm-hmm. It's possible.
Well, I can say personally, he does an amazing job, trying to mend that wound. I have the pleasure of watching him communicate with his daughter via phone or FaceTime, and it's a really beautiful thing to see. And we were fortunate enough to go back to London last year and spend some time with her and her husband and her baby, and it was just a beautiful experience. And it was really interesting for me to see how much alike they are. And we had some really great conversations, and she's very calm. She has a very calming spirit about her. Actually, just a wonderful young woman. So I just felt the need to say that, and I just think he does a tremendous job. Yeah,
I just like to add as well. It's a continuing journey.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, it's not ever done. Yes. Right, you can never make up for what you've lost. Right, but in any relationship with any of your children, it's something that's always going to continue to develop to the day you die. As they change, you change. You get older, they get older. Mm-hmm. Things happen in your life, right? So. I have a few friends of mine who have children or daughters, etc. And I've got some exceptional examples in my life of people that really rock for their kids. And that's what it is. The interesting thing that you said also, Doctor, was, when you have parents in the house where, they're absent, they're just there, and there's a disconnect between yourself and your parent. I think, not taking out the frame of girls, but also the frame of boys as well. I was raised by a single mother, but I suffered that same experience. It was very much about my sister, and I was the detached entity, which also leads to, behavioral things later on in life, because I couldn't relate or react to relate to a normal relationship. I didn't know what that looked like for me. So, but that really resonated with me as well. the potential impact on that. But yeah, it was, like I said, with my daughter, we continue to make the journey together. It's never always smooth, but that's what it is. Like I said, we're very much alike, and she's always going to be in my life for the rest of my life, and we're always going to have that connection. That's never going to go. So I'm glad for that.
Yeah, that's good. I want to mention something else. Two things that you mentioned was guilt and fear, right? And I kind of feel like, even from my personal experience, there can be like this defense mechanism. Well, it wasn't my fault, making this excuse. And I feel like if there's a man out here that's listening that has a child, a daughter out there that you haven't been in contact with, or, you're having some issues, try not to allow guilt of not being there earlier and fear to stop you from reaching out. Mm-hmm. I think it's so important that they probably don't even realize that they're operating in a space of guilt and fear, because, men, they have this ego thing, nothing is wrong with me. I'm not afraid of nothing. I don't,
It's not.
If we could just move that veil, that other mask, and say, be a little vulnerable to say, I really do feel guilty for not being there for you. It was fearful for me to reach out to you because I was afraid that you were going to lash out at me or you were going to be mean to me. So for the fathers, as we're encouraging daughters to reach out and to forgive, we're also encouraging the fathers to reach out, let go, admit, and be open.
Yeah.
Just be open.
Yeah. That's not to cut you up. I'll say that I agree with you mostly.
Okay.
And in my own head, in that period I didn't see them, I'll always imagine what I would do if I saw them. Okay. Or if I came across them. You have it mapped out in your head. I'll go out to her. I'm your dad. Do you know who I am? Blah, 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 blah. It'd be a big old hugging session, or be prepared for, the pushback.
Yeah.
Right. What you don't understand is when it actually does happen to you. Mike Tyson had made a famous phrase once. He goes, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face. Right? So, whatever you have in your head at the time when you feel you're going to react, very rarely happens when it actually happened. And it happened to me. It was the shock. It's like I got punched in the face and I didn't know what to do. I was shut down immediately. Wow. Right? For all of my, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Like, the fear paralyzed me completely, right? And it was really down this whole concept of the fear of rejection. Like, I didn't want to be rejected by her. That would have broken me at that moment, right? So you avoid it. So it's an avoidance tactic, right? You go inside yourself and you kind of ignore it. You shut everything down, right? I was on an 8-hour flight with them 4 seats ahead of me the whole time. And in theory, like I said, everyone's like, well, why don't you just X? You don't know what you do unless you're in that situation and what's led up to that situation up to that point. Right? So
frozen with fear.
Frozen with fear is that it will consume you completely, and it did. It absolutely did. Because of that. And it goes back to my own life and feeling that I was rejected. I know what that felt like. Do you understand? I didn't want to feel that from my daughter because I already felt it from my mother. Right, so it's different for different people. It's different things for different people.
Yeah. It's very multifaceted.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, extremely. Yeah. I just want to read a couple of comments. Angela Sewell, thank you so much for listening to our show today. She said, yes, forgiveness is key. It's so very true, and it takes time, patience, and lots of love. Thank you for your comment there, Angela. Yeah, as I'm also, taking this all in, I'm becoming very emotional sitting here. One of the things I thought back to was when we opened up this show and I said, well, I guess we're fatherless daughters. I mean, I know I am, but it goes back to that same thing, like having to actually admit it and own it. And sometimes even saying it just feels like, ugh, it kind of leaves this ugly feeling in your mouth. Yeah. But at the end of the day, that is the reality. And when I look back at, all of the symptoms that come with being a fatherless daughter, I've been through them all. Like, you can name one, there's an automatic check, right? But, as we talk about forgiveness in my case, and I'll be very transparent about it, I have forgiven. And this has been a conversation I have very often with my sister and my husband too. I have forgiven. However, I have chosen not to have a relationship with my father for my own mental stability. It's me and where I'm at in my life right now. I'm in a very good place, a peaceful place, and I want to keep it there. So that's why I have chosen not to have a relationship with my father. However, I definitely forgive him. He is but a human. He is a man, and he, makes errors just like the rest of us do. For myself, I find peace in that, and I'm good, honestly. It is still hurtful when I hear other people's story because I can relate wholeheartedly to that hurt. But there's also strength in that as well, because, I think I'm proof and you are proof too, that we can grow up and be, and figure it out and put it all together for us. Mind you, we are still works in progress, like everybody.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to say this.
Are we going to have this conversation?
Yes, we are.
Oh, dear.
We're on this show.
I'm glad we are. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I'm going to say this. I am your father.
Okay.
Okay. And you see what the impact has been to me separated from my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter could have very much adopted your attitude. Okay. And could have continued to adopt that attitude. She was very well, she was good. She was good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But she forgave me and allowed me back into her life to complete the circle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I am your father.
Wow.
You've watched what I've gone through. On the other side, regardless of how you feel about him and the mistakes he's made, because I've made mistakes also,
mm-hmm.
you see my daughter forgive me and seeing the wonders of that forgiveness, as you stated, going that last year and seeing us interact. Okay. You are robbing yourself of an opportunity by saying that you're good, because you're not. You're 99.9% good.
And I co-sign with that.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Y'all
throw me under the bus.
I'm not. I'm saying what it is.
He is absolutely right. And I was going to say that, you can't just, you're not good. Because you know what? I said the same thing. I was walking around saying the same thing, and God told me, I done took you as farther. Your mother done took you as far as she can take you. Your next level in life is in your daddy's arm. And whatever you need to do, or whatever you got to do, you need to get to your father. Hook or crook, however you got to do it, you need to get to it. Yeah. And I'm telling you, when I went through that piece of just going through trying to find my daddy and I didn't want nobody to tell me what he looked like, what he act like, what he was like. As long as he had breath in his body, I wanted to talk to him. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get to know him. And I pushed past all that pain and I made that connection. And it's like, as soon as I connected with my father, God started to reveal so many things to me in my life, my business, everything just took off to a whole nother level because I was obedient and I connected with my father.
Right. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. Actually, I know we're wrapping up for time, and I'm not going to jump on you, Candace, but there's a lot of women out there that feel the way that you do and don't realize it's a mask that they're wearing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mask, because I communicate with our dad and he's not a monster.
Mm-hmm. Nor do I think he is. You know what I mean? Like there's no, but that's not the feeling that I have. It's deeper than that, but
you need a part 3.
We don't need a part 3 because this is not counsel Lady T today.
We have 2 minutes left. This has been a wonderful show.
Oh yeah.
Dr. Gibbs,
great show.
You've been fantastic. Are there any closing remarks that you would like to make today? Because it sounds like we could continue going on forever, but any closing remarks while we have about 2 minutes left of the show to go?
1 minute.
I just challenge any female out there listening under the sound of my voice. If you know where your father are, make a connection. Do what you need to do to make it right. Your father, don't continue to be the victim. Don't continue to be angry and upset. Life got to go on. Yeah. And it's so much more life into forgiving a person and moving forward. Do what you need to do, make it happen. Do not continue to hold on to the resentment. Do not continue to hold on to the anger, because you really don't know the full story. You won't know the full story until you make that connection, with your dad. So reach past that pain and make it happen today.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Gibbs.
Yes, Dr.
DJ
Gibbs. Thank you so much.
Sessions.
DJ Sessions. Thank you so much
for sharing your story with us today.
Absolutely. And we will see every